Hello, this is Daniel Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide. In this video, it's grown a bit since I started. I wanted to do a guide for new players on being crew members on a multi-crew ship, which is one of the things I think new players should try to do or look at as how to get started in the game, mostly because it gets you quickly involved into a group of friends or possibly an org. But then I realized it was hard to follow instructions for things like targeting and power settings if the captain wasn't giving said instructions. So I realized I had to start with being a captain. And how to make that make sense, I need to talk about leadership in general. So that is what this is going to be, a top-to-bottom guide to captaining and crewing a multi-crew ship, the Multicrew Handbook. So, starting with leadership in general, the first thing is to realize the leadership situation you are in. And of all situations in my life that fall under the category of leadership, the one that most resembles captaining a multi-crew ship in an MMO was conducting a community choir. They're volunteers and amateurs. They aren't professional singers any more than your crew are professional astronauts. But they want to strive for that level of quality, even though this is just a hobby activity for them. Now, one of the best choir directors I learned from had a habit of when in practice the choir would screw up, he would pause and look down and say to himself, loud enough for us to hear, if the choir doesn't get it, then it is the conductor's fault. And at first I thought he was just not wanting us to feel bad, but I soon realized that what he was actually saying something else. By saying, if the choir doesn't get it, then it is the conductor's fault, he was telling himself, this is something I can fix. And inevitably, he either pointed out something to us or changed the cues, and it did get fixed. So captains, take ownership of your crew's performance. Treat their shortcomings as an opportunity for you to fix, and not a burden on you of their deficiencies. Later, when I took charge as the conductor of the choir, I added one more thing to that philosophy, and that was when leading volunteers, their confidence was the number one commodity to be nurtured. So I would run through each section of a piece in practice until they told me that they didn't need to run through it anymore. And then I would have them do it one more time, not looking at the score, so they were truly convinced. And then when I got to that point, I knew that I could pull out that piece at a moment's notice months later, and they would say, oh, we know it. I still joke that you could wake me up in the middle of the night and play the following 8 notes, and I could sing and conduct for the next 3.5 minutes because I had that confident of a handle on it. Now, when it comes to your ship, behave in a way that shows you have confidence in them, and that helps them have confidence in you and themselves. Little things like go, no-go status checks before each battle.
Go, no-go for landing. Retro. Go. Fido. Go. Guidance. Go. Control. Go. Telcom. Go. GNC. Go. Econ. Go. Surgeon. Go. Capcom, we're go for landing.
Helps you treat them like they are pros and helps make them feel like you are on top of everything. And instilling confidence is having a constant command and status language. You might, for example, adopt Star Trek's famous red alert, yellow alert, condition green nomenclature.
Red alert.
Or the more naval-oriented battle stations, general quarters, etc.
Battle stations.
But do so consistently so that with just 2 words, your crew will know what you are meaning and knows that everybody else knows too. And be clear in having folks what crew stations are theirs and having them communicate that back to you. With the more theoretical things out of the way, the game function clearly assigned to just the captain is the calling out of targets. There are 3 target slots, 1, 2, and 3. So while a single-seat craft or turret might get along with the target under cursor key, T, a captain needs to be familiar with a range of other targeting key bindings, such as previous and next hostile, previous and next attacker, so that they can quickly run through and pin multiple targets. Targets are pinned using the Alt key and the number, Alt 1, Alt 2, and Alt 3. Now, how you use these targets might vary based on the type of ship you have. On a gunship, like the Hammerhead or Redeemer, you might simply want them handled in order. Finish number 1 first, and then number 2, and then number 3. Or in a ship with multiple categories of weapons, like a fully crewed Retaliator, you might designate 1 as the torpedo target, and 2 and 3 are the gun priority. And then you might want to designate some crew to not follow the targets at all. So for example, tail gunner, stick to keeping the 6 clear of threats. If a numbered target is on our tail, then them of course, but otherwise just whoever is on our tail. Clear instructions, framed as standing orders, are essential. Which brings up another point. What does a captain deserve of their crew? To have their orders be followed, of course. But what does a crew deserve of their captain? To be given orders. No crew person in a time of urgency should ever have to think, I wonder what I should be doing. They should know for certain what they should be doing, either because their captain has given them general orders or specific orders. And the captain, ergo, should have a good idea of what every crew is doing in any alert. So having covered the position of captain, let's move to the things that will be expected for you to do in the various crew positions. The most common crew position, particularly for a new crew member, is gunner. If there is more than one gunner position, the captain will either ask you or tell you the position that you are going to take. They may use naval terms. If the ship is facing forward, starboard is to the right, because in simple boats, that would be the side the steering oar would be. Port is left, because that would be the side you would bring up to a dock. Why? Because otherwise the steering oar would be in the way, of course. Fore or bow is forward, aft or stern is rearward, belly is underneath, and topside is top. So on a hammerhead, you might get the starboard aft guns. There are a number of key bindings unique to turrets. Holding C instead of cruise control centers the turret. This can be handy if you have lost your orientation. G changes gimbal mode. What is gimbal mode? Well, when gimbal mode is on, your turret will stay pointed in the same location in space, even if the ship turns. This can be very useful to stay on your target in a battle. So when is it useful to have it off? Well, for example, if the captain has told a turret gunner to cover the rear of the ship, you would want, if not already targeting somebody, to stay facing the rear of the ship even if the ship turns. So gimbal is on to stay on target, gimbal off to stay covering the area around the ship. Staggered fire mode fires one gun at a time in rapid succession, while link fire mode fires all of them at once. The difference is only important on slower fire rate guns like cannons. Which is better? Staggered fire mode is more useful against quick-moving craft where it will be easier for one of the spray of shots to hit. Linked fire mode is better for punching through tough shields on slower craft, as 2 or 4 shots will be hitting the shields at once. Switch between fire modes with the V key. The turret HUD has a heading and pitch indicator. Many captains will want their gunners to act as their eyes in the back of their head, in which case have a consistent way of calling out targets. The general standard is heading, then pitch, then distance, starting with ship type or just bogey or friendly if the ship type is not known. For example, hostile cutlass 300 minus 35K. If your captain prefers to use clock headings, then each 30 degrees is one clock number. Next up on the list of positions is pilot or helmsman. What's the difference? Well, in general, pilot means detailed and precise maneuvers, while helm means open waters or open space. Other than that, the two are pretty much interchangeable, and in smaller crews, the pilot and captain are often the same. Get up to the sub-capital and capital ship sizes, and there starts to be a separate pilot seat from the captain's chair. Since this is a handbook for Multicrew, I am not going to be covering everything about being a pilot, only what is different about being a pilot in a ship with gunners, including very likely gunners who either individually or in total have more firepower than the pilot seat. And that difference is that your job as pilot is primarily to get the gunners on target, and then only secondarily to get your nose on target. So let's start with the simplest example of a hurricane, which would also apply to other single-top turret ships like the Scorpius. So with these craft, the fire range of the turret is an arc covering almost the entire top of your view. So the pilot's job is going to be to use roll to get the target into that upper half arc and then continue to roll to keep it there, since the target is going to be trying to get out of view of the turret by getting to your underside. Then continuing with any needed roll motions to pitch upwards to get your nose on the target. Now, just like regular combat, you need to also be worried about range, countermeasures, etc. But as I said, I'm only covering the unique features of multi-crew ships. Next, we have top and bottom turret craft, such as the Mercury Star Runner and most of the Constellation line. On these ships, the area that can be hit by both the top and bottom turrets are two narrow zones at the sides. So while the Hurricane was roll and then pitch, the Star Runner would be roll and then yaw, presuming, of course, that both turrets were crewed. Now, when you get to ships with 360-degree coverage, and when all the turrets are crewed, it is almost impossible to get all of the turrets on a single target. So that really isn't the goal. Instead, you want to get most of the turrets on target, and then you use roll in order to make it easier for those gunners to keep that set of turrets on target. When you get to larger ships, particularly ones with large numbers of missiles, you might be assigned as, let's call it, the Ordinance Officer. This has a particular advantage in the missiles will be able to be targeted wherever the Ordnance Officer can aim. It makes missiles more like a turret. Now, some captains might give their ordnance officer complete free rein over the targeting and launching of the missiles, but missiles are scarce enough that I would suggest not. Therefore, a very concise and clear communication is needed between the captain and ordnance officer. I would strongly recommend that both of them have voice comms. Before the battle, the ordnance officer should inform the captain something like this: ordnance count, number, type, size, etc. The captain would then say, ready number, size, type. For example, ready 2 strike force 2s. This tells the ordnance officer which missile to select and how many to have ready to launch. The ordnance officer would then confirm with 2 strike force 2 ready. The captain would then say target ship type, such as target hammerhead, or if they've tagged a target, say target number 1. The ordnance officer would then confirm with targeting ship type or number, such as targeting hammerhead or targeting target 1. The captain would then say either launch when locked or hold when locked, if he, for example, wants to get closer, and then launch, to which the ordnance officer would then say number, type, size away. For example, 2 strike force 2s away. Now, in the case of dumbfire, the situation changes because both the pilot and the ordnance officer are involved. So I would change it to captain, aim at ship type or number, which is then followed with launch when ready or hold when ready if the captain is planning on perhaps a point-blank attack. The pilot then answers with aim good, and then the captain would say launch. I prefer the captain say launch rather than fire because that can be confused with telling the gunners to fire. And that's a quick look at the ordnance officer. Finally, there's the task of engineering, which at least for now is almost entirely power management, but it's going to be changing a lot in the upcoming releases. The power triangle has 3 corners: shields, energy weapons, and engines. Setting the power higher or lower has a minor improvement to the maximum performance of that item and a substantial improvement on the recovery time of that item. So the main question for the person handling the power triangle is, what do we need to recover from? Shields been taking hits? Definitely move more to the shields. Energy weapons drain? More to it. Being using a lot of afterburner? More to thrusters. Now, a big part of this is also what are the needs of the ship. Turrets have their own energy supply, so the energy supply of the cockpit of, say, a hammerhead that has no weapons associated with it can be kept all towards the shields and thrust. And since a typical hammerhead pilot won't be using a lot of afterburner, it will most likely be all shields almost all the time, at least on a hammerhead. Now, those are the main positions I expect to see on multi-crew ships, at least as of 3.17.2. I expect this to be evolving over time, so I expect that there will be new versions of this video for each future release. Unfortunately, YouTube does not allow revisions to already published videos, so they will be separate updated videos. And now for an update ourselves on our Grow the Channel Ship giveaway. As of recording, we're at 89% of the subscriber goal and 87% of the membership goal, or the IAE Expo, whichever happens first, to give away to some lucky player their choice of the Anvil Liberator, that shipping ship for shipping your ships, or the Misk Odyssey, the long-length look-ahead launcher lorry. 1 entry per video. Members, you're entered automatically, and if the member is a member as of the publication date of the winning video and at the drawing time, remember that if you're one of the many people who've let your membership expire, they will win both the Liberator and the Odyssey. For non-members, just subscribe and comment with the secret word. And the secret word for this video is a tricky one. It is the composer of the song that I played the 8 notes for. And yes, I did say his name. Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Daniel Raymond for Ray's Guide.
Red alert.
Aye, sir. Red alert. All decks go to red alert.
Security control.